Okay, so this is part 2 of my labor and delivery. If you haven't watched part 1, you might want to check that out to figure out like what's going on. So I'll link that down below. Okay, so I called my doula and I told her that my water broke, and this was at 12:30 a.m. I called her, I was like, my water broke, and she said, well, what do you want to do? Because I had originally planned on laboring at home as long as possible. So she asked me what I want to do, and I said, let's just go ahead and go to the hospital. I was kind of worried since my water had broke that, because I know once your water breaks, things get real. And so I was really worried that things were going to get real at home. So I was like, let's go ahead and go to the hospital, but meet me at my house. And so my husband took our son next door, and we were rushing around trying to get everything ready. I jumped in the shower because my water breaking was disgusting and it got everywhere. And so when I got in the shower and he was getting things ready to take our son next door, I was like, okay, you need to hurry because I'm starting to hurt. So the contraction started while I was in the shower, and I was just like freaking out. Like inside I was like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? Like just shaking, like what is happening? Because it happened like so unexpectedly. And so I'm like rushing around, jumped out of the shower. I called my sister. I was like, you need to call everyone, just let them know what's going on. She was the only person that I knew would answer that late. And so we get everything ready, and my husband actually forgot our son's backpack with all his stuff. So while he's getting other things ready, I was like, okay, I'll take it next door. Because that's where he was going, was to my mother-in-law's next door. I was like, okay, I'll run it next door. So I grabbed the backpack and I ran out the door, and I'm like, nope, never mind. Run back inside because the contractions were really starting to hurt. So he ran it next door. And then we finally got everything ready, got in the car. I was putting makeup on the way to the hospital because I have a photographer and she was going to be there and I didn't want to look gross. So I just called the doula and told her to meet us at the hospital. And every contraction that I had it seemed like they were getting worse and worse. Like usually, from what I've read, from what I've like learned, it seems like the contractions stay the same in pain for a little bit, and then they get more intense as like you get further and further. Well, they were just getting more and more intense with every one. And every time I would have one, my water would come out more. And so we get to the hospital, my doula meets us there, we get in the elevator while my husband parks the car, and I remember telling her, I don't know if this is water or if I'm peeing, but something is just coming out. Because I had no idea. So I had to fill out all the information, all the paper, while I'm in pain. I keep having to lay my head down on the desk. And then my husband gets back up there and we finally go to a triage room. And they put me in a gown, and she's like, okay, I'll be back in a minute to check you. Okay, it felt like an eternity, and I was hurting so bad. So she finally gets in there, and she's like, okay, you're a 5 to a 6. And I was like, you can't be serious. This is awful. And so I waddled to our room, and I'd actually brought my own hospital gown. I was so excited to wear it. And so I asked the nurse, I'm like, can I go ahead and put my hospital gown on? And she's like, no, standard procedure, you can't wear your own. You have to wear ours in case you have to have a C-section. And I was like, what? My best friend had delivered there like a few months before and wore her own hospital gown. So I was really sour towards her, and I feel bad, but I was in a lot of pain, and she made me mad. And I was like, okay. And she said, yep. And I was like, no. Nope, this can't be happening. And I could not lay on the bed, and she wanted me to lay down so that she could hook me up to the monitors. And I had in my birth plan to do intermittent fetal monitoring. And I was like, well, here's my birth plan. And while I'm in pain, like having contractions on top of another, she's like, read it to me. So I'm having to read everything and stop. Read, stop. Read, and stop. I was not happy. And then I'm like, okay, well, is my doctor on call? And she's like, nope, it's Dr. so-and-so. I've heard horrible things about this doctor that was on call. So I am just like crying. My doula comes back in the room, and I'm like, this is awful. Nothing is going as planned. So that's one thing about birth that happens in like every birth, is it never goes as planned. So at that point I was like, okay, this really wouldn't be so bad if my butt did not hurt. But my butt hurt so bad. And this was probably 10 minutes after she checked me. And I'm like in the bed there, she's trying to hook me up, and I'm just irritated. My doula's back in there, and I'm like, where's Megan, my photographer? I'm like, where is she? And I'm just like in a lot of pain. I keep having to just like try to bear through it, and I was really tense. And I knew that you're not supposed to be tense, so I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna poop in the bed, because that's what it felt like. I was like, I feel like I'm gonna poop in the bed. Sorry if I do, just warning you. And so I just let my body like relax, and that's when I realized I'm pushing. I was like, I'm pushing, like I'm pushing down. And they're like, no. And then like all of a sudden the room fills with like 50 nurses, it felt like out of nowhere. And she's like, you can't. She's like, you can't push her. You have to have a C-section. Which isn't true. Don't let nurses scare you. Do not feel like just because you're pushing, because your body's telling you to, you have to have a C-section. That was really annoying. So I'm like, no, I'm pushing. And so this was, like I said, 10 minutes after she had last checked me. And the nurse is like, this is a different nurse. She's like, you're an 8. You're an 8. And I'm like, what? And then like every contraction I'm pushing harder and harder. And it is physically impossible to not push when your body is pushing. I was like, I'm pushing. Like every time I would just scream, I'm pushing. I would grunt. And I'm like, I'm pushing. Like I just kept saying it. And they're like, you can't. Like I was having an anxiety attack, and it was just crazy. It was just so much at once, and all of a sudden the room is filled with nurses, and she checks me again. She's like, okay, you're complete, but you cannot push. That was like literally a minute probably after she checked me the last. Like it was not like, everything was just like happening so fast. She's like, you're complete, but you cannot push. And I'm like, where's Megan? Where's the doctor? Like I was asking, where's my photographer, and where is the doctor? And they're like, you can't push till the doctor is here. And I'm like surrounded with like 50 nurses. It felt like there's probably like 10 or 15. And I'm like, what is going on? And I don't know if it was then or after the doctor finally got there, someone said page NICU. And I was like, something's wrong. But in all honesty, I was so out of it that I heard it, but I did not care. I was like possessed. That's what it felt like. Like with every contraction, I was possessed. Which they were like on top of another. And so I'm like, where's Megan? Where's the doctor? Finally, Megan gets in there, and my doula and my husband are on both sides of me, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm dying. Like it felt like I just needed comfort. And I look at my doula, and it's like, you're okay, you're doing great. And my husband's just over, he's like rubbing my fingers. I'm like laying my head on his hand, and my doula's like, you're doing great. I was like laying my head on my husband, who is like just like a comfort physically, and then my doula's like, you're okay. And I'm just like freaking out, like my anxiety is acting up, my legs are going numb because I'm like not breathing normal, and my lips are going numb. It was ridiculous. My hand was like stuck like this because I was just so like not breathing right. I was just anxiety. And then finally the doctor makes her appearance, and I feel like most of my labor was waiting on her. And so by the time she gets there, they're like, okay, you can push. One push. Like I pushed and our daughter's head was out. But once her head came out, blood just flew across the room. It was just like a pop of blood everywhere. Like everywhere. And I knew something was wrong. Like I knew just how they were acting, how much blood that was. And one nurse had to go change immediately because that's how much blood there was. I knew something was wrong. And I was just like laying there. I was like, this is it. I'm going to die, because that was my fear of hemorrhaging. I was like, but I was so like out of it. I was so worn out. I did not like, it's not that I didn't care. I was just like, this is just freaking crazy. And so she comes out, one more push, her body's out, and they cut the cord and they took her away. And my husband's like, well, I guess I won't cut the cord. Like he's mad. And they're like, it's okay. And I'm just like, nothing has gone as planned. I wanted her on my chest immediately. I wanted to breastfeed immediately. My husband was going to cut the cord. So they cut the cord and they take her away. And I'm like about to cry. I don't even know why. Emotions. So they cut the cord and they take her away. And I'm just sitting there like, didn't even get to see my daughter. He like is trying to take care of me and take care of her because he knows something's wrong. He doesn't know who to go to. And so he goes to see her and he comes back and he's like, I'm fine. Like I'm alert. I'm fine. And he's like, she looks like Oliver. And then I start crying because the thought of my son, I'm like, oh, I miss him. And my doula did not leave my side. While my husband could go see our daughter, but I'm still like being worked on, she was right there. And the doctor, like, there was clearly a lot of bleeding. That's what they were worried about. The nurses kept having to push on my stomach. They did that with my son, but this was excruciating. It was worse than actually pushing her out. Like, was the pain of them pushing on me and tugging on me, and she was trying to get the placenta ready to come out. And it was just a mess. Like, it was chaotic, and I had no idea what was going on, and I didn't know what was wrong. I forgot to mention that one of the nurses I know personally actually photographed her and her son, like, a few weeks before. And so she was a big comfort as well. And so they're trying to get the placenta out, and she's pushing on my stomach, and I'm just like wanting to see my daughter. And so finally they get the placenta out, and all the while they somehow hooked me up to Pitocin. I don't know when that happened. There were bruises all over my arms from where they tried. I don't know if they did that while I was in labor or immediately after. I didn't feel it, but they hooked me up to Pitocin to shrink down my uterus and to try to stop the bleeding. And then the doctor, she's like, okay, I'm going to stick these up your bottom. And I thought that she meant not my bottom, but no, she meant my bottom. And she shoved like 3 pills, I don't know how big they were, to help stop the bleeding. And so it was just crazy. They were pushing blood out of me nonstop and trying to get the placenta out. They got it out, and she put the pills in. Finally, things started to calm down. Finally got to hold my daughter. I still didn't know what happened. Like, I just thought it was normal, and they just were a little concerned for some reason because she came so fast. And so I finally got to hold her. We breastfed, and everything was fine from then on. And the nurse that I had known personally, she helped me take my shower, and she, like, popped her head in, and she was like, they were changing her first diaper while I was in the shower and stuff, and she said, I'm just letting you know that the reason things were the way they were is your placenta ruptured, and she was, like, swallowing blood. It's really dangerous for your placenta to rupture. I never even heard of this. And so she's like, we just watch out for her bowel movements. They'll be a little bloody at first. And that's mainly why she was telling me, just so I didn't freak out that there was blood in her poop. And she's like, and if you would not have made it here, you would have bled out. So I'm like, I could have easily died. If I would have stuck with my original plan to stay home in labor, I could have had her at home and died. And it's just crazy. And it's like, it's emotional. I mean, it was crazy. And I had my all-natural birth. If I had planned to not go through with it, I would have had no choice anyway, because it went so fast. Like, it's a good thing I had the mindset of going all natural, because I had no choice with how fast it went. So my water broke at 12:30. She was born at 2:01. Got to the hospital probably about 1-ish or something. I really don't know. It just happened so fast. And so everything was just like a complete blur. It went really quick. She's here now and she's healthy. We're both healthy. I was very paranoid the following weeks that a piece of the placenta was left, because I've heard of that, and I've heard that's awful and very dangerous. So I would call my nurse and be like, I'm cramping really bad. Am I okay? Can I come be looked at? Like, I went into the doctor and he looked at me once. He's like, you're fine. He's like, you're not bleeding that much. But pretty much, it was absolutely crazy. The contractions were intense, but let me just say, if I can do that fast, that hard, all at once, anyone can give birth naturally. And I will say, the recovery this time was a breeze. I felt amazing right after she was born. I was up and got in the shower with our son. After the epidural wore off, I feel like I was hit with a ton of bricks, and it was very sad. Like, I cried while I took my shower. I was so upset. After I had her, I took the shower, I sat in bed, and I talked for hours. I was so excited. I was so happy. No sadness. Like, I was just thrilled that we just did that. And it was crazy, but it was beautiful. And it was just insane. My doula and the photographer stayed for a while. They were amazing. I love them. And we had visitors the next day, and ended very well. It could have gone completely different, and I'm just so glad I followed my gut and went to the hospital when my water broke. I'm going to wrap this up because I know I'm rambling, but if you have any questions at all about natural birth or my experience, which I know is completely different than most, but I can help you out, just leave a comment below and be sure to subscribe because I will be posting videos. Bye, y'all.